He joins us again after another win for the Ball and Tigers across the weekend. Hello, Rodney.
Hello, Daniel. Gee, I've seen you a bit over the last week or so, haven't I?
Where have I been? Oh, yeah, we have. A lot of functions together.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing, is it, Rocket?
Cashy's going.
No, Cashy's. Unfortunately, no.
Love of the game, Jim.
Love of the game, Jim.
Grassroots.
Unfortunately, no Cashy's.
People's champions.
Just keep giving back to the community.
I was going to say men of the people.
A victory for the Tigers, the Ball and Tigers?
Yes. Not a great win. Didn't play exceptionally well. The boys talking about it all week. We'll just turn up and win, and that's the way they played. So. Not inspiring anyway. Was
that a bit like what you may have saw yesterday at Etihad Stadium with Hawthorn and North Melbourne, that perhaps Hawthorn might have believed similarly?
It's an interesting one, that. Normally Hawthorn aren't like that. Have to give credit to the Kangaroos, though. They played exceptionally well every part of their game. It's interesting with the Roos. We talk about the rebuild, and we have a reset or a rebuild, but their top 8 players, 9 players, got a lot of experience and talent. So their list is very young, but their team wasn't very young yesterday. So sometimes it's a good sales pitch that they've done this rebuild. But when you got Tarrant and Thompson down the back end, you got Brown and Waite up the other end. So you've got talent and experience. You've got Zeeble, Cunnington, Higgins, Goldstein. So there's 8 without even trying really hard of good experienced players.
Is that further to the point we were talking about last week when we were referencing Carlton? The experienced players still play the key roles, and the young players aren't asked to do those big roles, as we say in the side?
Oh, for sure. There's no doubt about that. And it becomes a tipping point where you have too many kids, too young, big. And I don't know what the right answer is, but there's got to be a point where you play too many kids and you get belted that it doesn't help their development. It actually stunts their development. So having some experienced players around them, they're now not asked to play big roles, as Jim was saying. And also when the time gets tough and you have 5 or 6 goals in a row kicked against you, what you do, well, the young fellas don't know what to do. So having some experience around really helps.
Goldstein, do you think he's back to his best? I know I'm a bit sceptical on the hit-out numbers, but he was effective hit-outs, which helped North Melbourne play the game in their half.
I don't know if he's back to his best, because generally he gets a lot of the ball around the ground as well. I mean, he's been one of those ruckmen. I think he had a bad one last week, and I think there was a bit of hysteria about maybe Brad Scott used the media as a bit of a cattle prod for him. But I don't think he's been as bad as people think either. I think he's been reasonably solid and pretty good, but not in the top 5 or 6 at the moment.
So what do we make of North Melbourne? This is a question probably to all of you. Have we underestimated their capabilities? Have other clubs underestimated their capabilities playing against them? Because it's 5 weeks now. It's not like it's a one-off. I don't think you can count the first game against Gold Coast.
No, well, I think they would have won that if that was in Melbourne, because Brown was ineffectual, and they wouldn't have been able to stop him, and same with the Waite. So they could probably win that if they was in Melbourne, or even it was playing the Gold Coast in the dry. So they've had a good draw as such, but they've only the fact you can only do what you can do, can't you? So I think been reasonably impressive. The interesting thing will come if they lose some experienced players, how that works for them. But certainly at this stage they're going very well.
I think we underestimated them because we didn't expect much from them. I think if you go into a season with an expectation or an analysis of a team, and you think, well, they're not going to be much good compared to everyone else, then you probably don't give them the credit they maybe deserve early in the season. Take out the water polo game, because you can't read anything into that. They beat Carlton, they beat St Kilda, who we've learned since have been pretty average, pretty poor so far. And then they pushed Melbourne for 2.5 quarters before the D's running over them. This was the challenge for them to get a scalp, so to speak.
Validity game.
Validity game. For everyone to start to stand up and take notice that they're more than just a team that can beat the bottom teams. They're actually a team that can beat anyone on any given day. And we saw that in the first 5 minutes. I gave it a bit longer yesterday before I worked out that they were going to win the game, but they were a dominant, Jim, and the way they played, inside and outside, there was terrific balance.
Oh, well, they were getting the clearance, so they were able to play the territory game, but then when they didn't win it, the pressure they were able to put on Hawthorn around the contest, they were really physical, the Kangaroos, and normally in games gone by, it's the Hawks been doing it to the Kangaroos. They've sort of beaten them up around the ball, but once you have that pressure and you force Hawthorn or any side to go slow back down the line, you play into Robbie Tarrant and even Big Madge down back, and that's what surprised me, how quickly they've gelled as a side. Like Zeebel's now almost a permanent forward, and playing really well.
Which isn't a bad thing.
Which is a great thing. He looks a more natural forward, even throughout his career. But even how tall they are down back, and that's a credit to Thompson and Tarrant, and because they've got Thompson, Tarrant, Vickers, Willis and Dorr. It's almost the counter to every way sides are going, because opposition forward lines are going one, maybe two smalls. But they almost play the four talls down back. McMillan's can play tall as well, but they've gelled really well down back. They're the number one backline or defence, however you want to put it, for points against so far early in the season.
I reckon it's not the first time, but for a long time that I've seen Hawthorn hack kick the ball out of defence consistently. And it kept coming back to a wall of Kanga players. So the pressure around the ball was unbelievable. And then not having that poise like Hawthorn were able to do to get an uncontested mark and then control the tempo of the game. They just weren't able to do that.
So when you're in the coach's box and North Melbourne get the start they got, it was incredible. They had 12 scores from 16 entries in that first quarter. So it shows how efficient they were when they went forward. And really, Jared Waite should have kicked 2 goals from 15 metres out straight in front. They would have had 9 goals in the first quarter. In the coach's box, when he is sensing, hang on a sec, this isn't playing out as I thought it would, and how long does it take for you able to sort of tangibly get a change in the way that your team plays to counteract what's happening out there?
I think as a coach, you get a feeling for that pretty quickly, and it doesn't have to relate. It doesn't have to translate to scoreboard. You get a feeling the way the players are running and how they're attacking a contest, and also the opposition. So you know that things are a bit askew here. With the Gold Coast, we beat Hawthorn last year, both times. Really found that going longer to Lynch or to tall targets. And I noticed it yesterday with Brown. They had 3 going up with Brown. They had 3 players to try and spoil him. And, of course, there's numbers on the ground, so they get outnumbered at the fall of the ball. And really attacking them deep and attacking them in a height sense really does expose them a bit or put them under pressure.
It's a great 1-2 combo they've got. Jared Waite could have had a monster day. He kicked 3 goals, 5. But when you see that really good forward synergy, you don't see those two jump into each other, do you?
No, that's right. And the tallest one down there is probably Frawley. Maybe they really lack the big height, if that's right, or real tall. So they roll off, and they don't intercept Mark Hawthorn. They spoil. Yeah. So therefore there is and sometimes they'll have 3, sometimes 4 players will go. So Brown doesn't mark it, or Waite doesn't mark it, and Waite will come in. He's the floater across, so he'll have the 4 players up, so he'll be able to judge it if he wanted to. But the ball will hit the deck, so there you got Zeeble, you got other smaller player, Turner, and these players around who can put some pressure on.
Which they did yesterday beautifully, and all over the ground, because even when Hawthorn were delivering the ball inside their forward 50, it was high, long kicks to their talls, as you talked on, Jim, and they were able to converge and intercept the ball way too many times in that first half.
Yeah, well, Dorr, Tarrant and Thompson, and we said that before, and the difference between Hawthorn took 11 intercept marks.
Yeah.
And Tarrant finished with 16 marks alone. So they were just able to set up, get their structure in place, and Hawthorn only really got back into the game once they were a little bit braver with their ball use. They started to sort of switch the play, take that one on the 45, sort of try and shift the North Melbourne defence.
Yeah, and that's what they've done in the past, haven't they? I've noticed too with Hawthorn, and they've played well this year, that they do handball a lot more, but they have a chance to either go lateral or forward, but they go back with the handball, then they go back again, then they try and set up. And that loses some territory, then that creates some more pressure on them. So they have opportunities to split it open. I mean, it's a new part of their game, but I think they probably need to be a bit more attacking with it.
So this is your thing here, Jimmy, about what does it say, who does it say more about? Are you nervous as a Hawthorn supporter about what you saw yesterday, or was that just one of those days?
No, full credit to North Melbourne. North Melbourne, as Half said, were awesome in the first half. They got outplayed, and some days the opposition can just do everything right. They were winning it at the clearances. They set up beautifully in defence, and then Brown was on fire in the first half, and then once he went quieter, Waite started to get on top. They just had a good day all round. Cunnington was absolutely brilliant around the contest. He's the one who maximised Goldstein's good work, but it was really interesting. We talk about the Tom Mitchell situation, how you play him, and we saw the week before Nathan Jones really sit behind him at every single stoppage in the centre bounce. Kangaroos immediately identified, we've got the advantage. at the centre bounce with Goldstein over McAvoy. And Jacobs didn't even start on Mitchell in the centre bounce. It's like, well, we're still going to try and win this and get it our way. Once they did the centre clearance, then he came and sort of tagged him around the ground.
I think the thing with Cunnington, you mentioned him, like he's not a great runner, so he doesn't run a lot between the arcs, and he just chugs along really. And I've watched him closely at times where he struggles in the modern game when running. But his ability with clean hands, he's as clean as anyone in the competition, and his vision to be able to set a teammate up around traffic or over the top of someone is just first class. He's as good as anyone in the competition at that.
What he does well with his handball, and it sounds really simple, but he takes pride in it. So if Half or Rocket are really close, he doesn't just cannon it into him. That's one of my pet peeves, as you can tell. Is players just fire handballs, or they handball it behind them, or actually don't take much care in their handballing. Yeah. He puts it to advantage. Next time as Rocket said, you closely watch Ben Cunnington, he sets up the play by hands, but he puts players into space. He almost leads them into space, or he puts the right amount of weight onto it. It's a good skill.
I guess it says more about the Kangas, that one yesterday. What if we're playing that game? They were just very good, and they are capable on their day to do that to most teams. They've got great targets, got good inside depth, and they've got a defence that seems to be working really well. The introduction of Majek Dawes seems to have freed up Thompson and Tarrant to a degree and allowed them to be a bit more attacking in the air and going forward as well.
I think the thing with Thompson, because even though he's 32, he's still got some good speed, and he has played on smaller players at times, so he can play on that medium top. He's the one that might take a Dustin Martin when they play Richmond. It'll be interesting when they play Richmond. They haven't got the tall players, and they may have to, for balance. But Daw can take the bear in the square or the bigger player.
So they got Port Adelaide this week. He probably gets the Robbie Gray matchup.
Yes,
because Robbie Gray plays almost as a traditional full forward, as a small.
Yeah, him and Wingard, that type of thing. He'll be able to take them.
So we'll know a fair bit more about North the next month. They've got Port, Sydney, Richmond, and the Giants.
That's a tough month.
It's a tough month of footy.
If they split those, just say they split those. You have to say
they could beat Port.
They're in the conversation.
If they can win two, it'll be a great effort.
Yeah.
And I'm not being smart. If they win one, there's not a negative.
I think most sides would look at that stretch and say if they can go 50-50.
Can I ask about my favourite player?
Well, please do.
Your favourite player?
Oh, here we go.
James Sicily.
Yeah.
What do you like, his temperament?
Not really. But I just thought it was set up for him and to go forward to try and see Hawthorn win the game. Now, I know he was playing well in defence, and that's where he's playing, but with Roughhead struggling, I mean, how tempting is it, Rocket, to put someone like him forward to try and be that game breaker, like he was a couple of years ago against the Bulldogs, and win them the game as opposed to potentially keeping them in the game at the other end of the ground, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think Clarko over the time has made changes. He's prepared to not roll the dice, not the right phrase, but being able to throw players around. I suppose it's like Buckley with Darcy Moore, so they're only playing back with that game. It might have been the Giants. Threw him forward because you try and win the game. So I would have thought it would be tempting. Probably O'Brien, you could probably swap. Because Sicily has got a lot of talent and his ability to mark the ball, and he's a nice kick. So, that would have been an option, really, and probably was discussed.
Yeah, I would have kept him back because they got back into the game with him at halfback with that kicking, and he's actually one who's a bit braver to bite off a bit more on the kick, and he actually has the ability to do it, and that's where they were falling down. They'd actually eventually win it back at halfback or in their back 50, but they were just, if it wasn't in his hands, they went really slow. The Roughhead one, I would have maybe we're trying to tell Alistair Clarkson, probably the best coach in modern
dangerous.
Yes, but maybe I would have just experimented with Ruffy around the ball.
Well, they did that towards the end.
Yeah, but a bit sooner because Big Boy was struggling a bit with Goldie, and you try and isolate Bruce because he was the one who was having a day, and try and isolate him maybe inside 50.
I think the thing too, it's interesting with their forward setup. Missing Riolo and Piopolo is an enormous loss for them because their forward structure and efficiency of goals has been around the pressure and those guys. Now, taking them out, they've still got Jarman Impey, but they haven't got the total speed, so their forward structure was... And they haven't got height. It's really only Ruffy. Maybe O'Brien goes down there, but nothing that's really dangerous. If Ruffy struggles, well, it tends to dry up. Is
he going to be a forward at any point again, Sicily half, or do you think he's just... he's going to be a key post defender.
12 intercepts yesterday, 28 disposals. I mean, they had a lot of ball in that area of the ground, so that probably inflated those numbers to a degree. But he just looks really calm and like one of those guys that can springboard you really quickly from halfback or through the back 50.
His depth on his kicking, he kicks in a mile.
You know, he does too.
I didn't
punches it low too.
Yeah, he's got some serious power on it. And, with sides playing so short in defence now, he can actually kick over that extra line and get you out the back.
He takes aggressive options too. He's happy to take one on.
That's what I like.
But they weren't good enough yesterday, and the Kangas were awesome and deserved their 28-point victory in the end. The scoreline flattered the Hawks for the way that they played, the boys in the royal blue and white. An epic, said Dwayne on Fox Sports yesterday, 76-71. The Gold Coast Suns winning by 5 points as Cameron Rayner, the number 1 draft pick, did have a chance, difficult although it was, from the arc to finish the game in a level score with 76 points apiece. A Q clash. Now, you've lived a couple of these, Rocket, as the coach of the Gold Coast Suns. How important, just outside of the result for a second, how important is the Q clash to Queensland football?
Yeah, certainly it's nothing like the derby or the showdown. There's no doubt about that. But there's a bit of pride with it. There's certainly some angst bordering on animosity between the two up the road.
But just for the future of it, the integration of the fans and the public getting behind these two teams and allowing the game to grow.
I think those concepts certainly work and certainly gives the fans something to hang on to. Just obviously need both teams to hopefully be middle of the road or middle of the table, up towards finals. Was it helped by the fact that a couple of Stephen May instances, a bit of spite was put into it, that it actually creates more interest? Oh yeah, that has helped. And over the years, there's been a bit of verbal repartee between the two, which probably hasn't got a lot of play down here. So I think it's more going to be, I think, as relevance once they become better teams. I want to ask you about one player. A lot is made of all the sort of the stars, the high draft picks, but Took Miller, what's he like to coach? Because his job on Zorko yesterday was enormous. I think he kept him to 10 touches, but he found a lot of the ball as well. Yeah, the Zorko struggled this year with the tag, hasn't he? He's really Took is he from day one very professional, easy to coach. He's the most coachable lad of all time, and just works his backside off. If you gave him a role, he's a sort of bloke that'd do it 100%. So, it's good to see him in good form. I just want to go back a little bit to just footy in Queensland. To watch the game last night, there wasn't very many people there. Fox Footy even chose not to put it on their main channel, which I thought was interesting, that they would put it on 503 and they had the bounce on 504 while the live game was going on. I don't think that happens often. Too often? Is there reason to be concerned, or is it just the cycle of the two clubs being down near the bottom that it's not getting the sort of, the attention it should get? I think a bit of both. I think you'd be concerned. No doubt about that. I think both down near the bottom. I didn't see the game, but talking to you earlier that it wasn't a great game. It was not. No, it was not. And it's an interesting one that... if you put all your numbers back, and which you said both teams maybe have... Well, Stuart Dew definitely did that with Gold Coast once they had the lead. Yeah, I personally don't think... I know it's all about winning, and it is, but at the same time, I think football in Queensland needs some entertainment as well. I know as a coach you want to win, but... there needs to be more goals kicked, I would have thought. If you're going to you're talking about the fans. Yeah. So getting near the finals will drag some fans back, but at the same time, if the football's not entertaining, people have got other things to do. Was that a difficult thing for you as coach of Gold Coast, where you've got that whole thing about trying to create this wholesome football club that's got sustainable success, marrying that up against, well, we've got to put on a show because it's not a football environment and we've got to create some excitement? Not so much a show in those terms, but along the lines of entertaining, if that's the right phrase. The trouble was as well as injuries and what you've got at your disposal, and the Suns are a very young team, so learning to win consistently, that's obviously going to be a positive, but when we talk about both teams, Brisbane are young as well, and results will certainly get people more through the gates. There's no doubt, and that's proven wherever. But you probably wouldn't want the games to be 60 to 50 or 70 to 60 at the same time.
So the Brisbane Lions, how frustrating would this be for Fagan? You keep trying to sell a message in almost whatever game plan or message you're saying, well, this will help us get a win, but you've been close without getting the win.
Yeah, it's interesting in this competition that there was a lot of positivity about Brisbane at the end of last year, even though they only won 4 games. Is that right? 4. That then creates its own pressure. Now that you're 0-5, if he was 0-5 last year, there wouldn't be any discussion really about they're developing. Now it's like, oh, hang on, no. From a media point of view, we need to win. So there's a bit of heat now on Brisbane, and if they keep going 0-6, 0-7, the blowtorch will actually come onto them at some stage. So
we've got the Giants next week.
Yeah, so they've had 2 close losses. So they're thereabouts. They had 1 bad one last week. So they're not going so bad as performance-wise, but they certainly need a win. And I think your point there, Jim, is that to cement belief in the group.
Yeah.
And you can only say for so long, we're going okay, we're doing well, we're doing this well, but hang on, 4 points is 4 points.
They're a frustrating conveyance, Brisbane, because in quite a few games just this year, they've looked horrendous.
Yes.
And you think, what's going on here? And then out of nowhere, they get themselves back into the game. I mean, that happened against St Kilda, it happened against Melbourne. Certainly happened again on the weekend.
Port
Adelaide was another one where they looked like they were going to get blown out of the water. So is there something there to think, whether it be spirit, whether it be intestinal fortitude, whatever it is, that they won't lie down, or is it that they can only do that when they start to freewheel when they know they can't win?
Well, I think this issue with Brisbane is the fact they just don't have the experience to do it for long enough. And we saw Carlton on the weekend against West Coast that West Coast 6 goals to 2 post 25-minute mark of the quarter. So it's being able to hold on long enough, I reckon, for a team like Brisbane. They just don't have the class of the experience to do it long enough. But clearly, if I'm looking at Brisbane and answering a question about whether or not they are capable, clearly they are capable because they've done it 4 times out of 5 games for patches. But obviously, you can't play footy in patches and win games too often in AFL level, let alone Rockets team in the Eastern Footy League. You can't play patchy footy and succeed. You've got to be able to sustain it for more often than not the majority of the game. Brisbane just don't seem to be able to do that at the moment.
Would it encourage you, Rocket, that they don't give up? That there's been a few times this year that they could have been blown out by 12, 14 goals. It's only happened against Richmond. The other games they've stayed in it. Yeah,
I think it shows their capability. I haven't seen their game, so I haven't seen them the start. Whether they are playing, not safe footy's not the right phrase, but do they, in your terms, free will? They've got some talent there, Zorko and Beams, but Charlie Cameron, Lewis Taylor. They've got some speed. And that's why I thought they might have been able to do okay against the Suns, who aren't super quick with Hall out. And obviously the Suns were able to negate that by having numbers. But maybe they've got to be able to... You asked me a question off air about goals kicked, and when did we play defensive footy? In the first month of the season seems to be more goals, and here we go. But whether they just trying to stay in games and they don't, and then they think, oh, we're 6-8 goals down, we need to actually take it on, and they actually get exciting, and that should be their brand, with a teach the defence along the way. So if obviously they get on defence early and they get scored anyway. So it's an interesting one, but for me, and we mentioned earlier, for me is a real concern Zorko. The season he had last year, to be tagged nearly every week, and he's getting 10 possessions. One of the weeks was 12, another one was 8 or 9. Like, he's got to be able to do something. A lot of good players get tagged, and they overcome it to a certain degree. So I don't know whether he was changed in positions, whether he plays that high forward, then plays an extra midfielder, so it opens up your forward line, or whether he goes and tags someone else. He actually runs with an opposition player just to try and change it up.
Well, he's got a challenge in front of him, as do the Brisbane Lions. But I'm not losing hope if I'm a Lions fan at the moment. I'm buoyant that there is something there. It's going to take some time still, but I'm buoyant that there is something there. Who knows how far it can go. Rodney Eade is with us, our Monday analyst on the Breakfast Club. We'll take a break, come back with plenty more. In fact, what about this little quirk in the system? If Melbourne win on Tuesday night, after 5 rounds, there'll be 12 teams, 3-2. They were handsomely beaten by Adelaide on Friday night up there at the SCG, the fortress that you know very, very well as a former coach of the Swans. What's wrong with the Sydney midfield? How do we get them back into gear? Because they are down.
They are really down. It seems to me that Hanbury just hasn't been the same since he's come back. He's had an interrupted pre-season. Whether he's carrying an injury, people have questioned whether Kennedy is, but Hanbury doesn't seem to be the same player with his running. Parker's had a pretty good season, but it was down, and so was Kennedy. So they drive around the ball. They're not super quick. They suit the SCG. They get numbers, and they're certainly tough and tight. So Ellis, Yeoman and Greenwood, not great runners either, but they big bodies, and they're able to more than match them in there. And if they don't get the drive and don't get that territory, they struggle when they only got the one forward. And Adelaide played extremely well having the two players on Franklin.
Another player I want to ask about who's spent a fair bit of his career in the midfield, and he's obviously got enough credits in the bank. He's been a star. But where do you play Kieran Jack now at this stage of his career? Because when they were struggling in the midfield, they obviously want to put Heaney and Mills and these sort of young guys up in the midfield. But he probably hasn't found his role in the forward half. So where do you play a guy like that?
Yeah, last year they mostly played him as that high forward, as that extra midfielder, get up and get back, and he's certainly got a big tank. Whether it's a wing, whether it's a tagger, they don't normally tag, but that takes another midfielder out. They've got a lot of sameness about their midfield, a bit of class differential, but not super speed. It suited the SCG. I think Heaney's a star. I'd be playing him there more and more as much as they could.
He's very good, Isaac. He's very good. Hey, look, you've also coached big name forwards, and they dominate the ball. Clearly, the plan now, obviously, playing the Swans is just crowd buddy and hope somebody else doesn't beat you, or force someone else to beat you, like a Sinclair or a Heaney. How do you coach if you're the Swans? How do you coach that? How do you coach that out of your players? Look for somebody else.
Yeah, just because the stars do attract the footy.
Yeah.
Even if you coach against that, because generally they're in the right spot. They're in the vision, and he's such an imposing figure as well. So, but they do tend to kick it longer. I was noticed the other night they were kicking a lot of long balls, which under pressure, generally they like to play a territory game. I think they've got to lower their eyes. They've got to someone. If there's two on Franklin, there's got to be a spare somewhere. So whether that spare is playing in the midfield and is not being used, but they've got to be able to go forward and get in a dangerous spot. They've got to lower their eyes to have another person that kick a goal. So if they don't, they keep going to Franklin. I think the same will be happening what's at the moment.
I was looking at that Sydney issue with Parker, Hanbury and Kennedy, Parker and Hanbury. So in their grand final year, they were getting 90 possessions between them as a sort of a threesome, which is very impressive. This year, they're at about 66. So it's 24 less disposals they're getting. And when they're not getting 24 away from them is often that's made up of contested possessions and clearances, and in Hanbury's case, kicking the ball inside 50. So that is a huge difference. And I just wonder whether we started to see the impact of not having that recognised ruckman. I mean, Sinclair's a sort of a ruck forward, but Jacobs did dominate the clearances the other night, even against the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs won the clearances without a recognised ruckman against Sydney. I just wonder whether that's affecting Kennedy getting first use of the footy, Parker getting first use of the footy when he's in the midfield.
But they're good enough, those players, and experienced enough to be able to come up with systems to work around that. And this is a thing that we've spoken about a bit in the last couple of years, that when you haven't got a recognised ruckman, there's only really two options. You're going to get a neutral, or you're probably going to lose it. Whereas if you've got a recognised ruckman, you can win it, a neutral, or you're going to lose it. So there's three options. So you can probably work with it a bit better when you haven't got a recognised ruckman, because you can sort of narrow the field as to where the ball might end up more often than not, how you can win it. So with those experienced players in there, that shouldn't be an issue for them.
I understand that, but I thought one thing was for certain on Friday night, that without Sloane there, that Josh Kennedy would dominate, because he had a really poor game. He never has two bad ones in a row, and he didn't have the Crouch brothers or Sloane around him in the opposition. That was his night to just own the game. He couldn't get near it.
I still don't know why that is. I'm sure John Longmire was looking for the same answer that we're asking here for the question. But
well, hopefully he can wait an extra week because he's playing the Cats. So maybe, hopefully he can have two bad ones.
But if you have a look at the Swans' form, it's been okay, but it hasn't been great.
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't been great.
Yeah.
They lost to Port. They lost Friday night. I think they did well against the Giants. That's been their best win. And
but that was still a scroungy sort of night too.
They didn't play well against the Dogs.
No.
Probably should have lost that.
That's right.
And now it's probably looking at a reasonable win in the West. At the time, I thought winning by 3 or 4 goals, wherever it was, over in Perth, I didn't think it was a great win. So their form's patchy.
So Adelaide, though, on the flip side of that, they go in without the Crouchers, without Rory Sloane, and they're able to, with Ellis Yeoman, big bodies in there in Greenwood, get the job done, not only through the midfield perspective, but forward of the ball as well. And Taylor Walker, you mentioned before that Brad Scott might have used the media as a bit of a prod for Todd Goldstein. If you were Don Pike, would you have done the same with Taylor Walker? Because his response was terrific from a leadership perspective on Friday night, and he copped a hammering last week.
He did. I think there was enough media without Don doing anything like that. I think Tex knew himself. I would have thought that Don just would have had a one-on-one and had a chat with him and sort of showed some faith and some confidence in him and be able to turn that around. And I think the way Tex plays, you're fairly confident he was going to turn that around.
Yeah, look, I gave him a bit of leniency because I thought he was just coming back with his body. He had an interrupted pre-season, and that can affect your second and third efforts.
Yep.
If you don't play a lot of footy and you're not match fit, you can only really give the one big effort. You can't bounce back up. You can't follow up. All that sort of intensity stuff. It's very difficult to do. So also some players, when their body's not quite right, you're thinking about other things. You're not completely switched on. Some players just can't play a little bit underdone. But he was fantastic on Friday night. But the 2 guys that really impressed me, and it was the big question mark over the Crows, is how do you replace Brodie Smith, All-Australian halfback flanker, and then Lever going to the Demons? They're still number 1 in intercepts, with Duday filling the role of Lever, but the Seed, Paul Seedsman.
He's playing well, isn't he?
He's playing fantastic.
But
what he's doing a little bit different from some of the other halfbacks of the Crows is he takes the game forward. So he's one of the leaders of rebounds, but also he gets a lot of inside 50s. So for a halfback wing type, because he goes between the two, to actually give that drive, he was so dangerous the other night, up and down the wing. And then Rory Atkins as well, hitting the scoreboard with 3 goals on the other wing.
Well, he's averaging 26.5 disposals a game, Seedsman. And
pretty good numbers.
But he's finally having a crack at it. He's someone that has had so many injuries over his time at Collingwood and even at Adelaide. He got ill at one point as well. He just hasn't had a run at it, and it's just terrific to see when he's been given an opportunity what he's actually capable of doing with that continuity in his game.
Yeah, and having spent some time with him at Collingwood,
of course,
his confidence seems to have actually growing, and he seems to stay in the contest longer. When he was at Collingwood and even early days at the Crows, he had the contest and then it sort of flowed out of the contest. But he seems to have that second and third effort. He's saying his tackling numbers will be up considerably from what they were before. So for that, and then on the back of that hard work around the contest, you can tell he's ending up with more of the ball.
A lot of Collingwood fans particularly reference his Anzac Day medal as to sort of what he's capable of doing, almost like a reference point. Is it unfair to say it off one performance? Well, that's what you're capable of doing. You should do that all the time, or do you need to, as a coach or as a player at AFL level, do you need to see it more than just once or twice before you can say, yeah, he can actually do it?
Oh yeah, I think you need to have it consistently, but it's about getting the basics right. It's about being your contest and working hard enough and your work off field, your preparation, all that thing. Not every player, but most players can have a good game. It's being able to back up, and that's what good AFL players are. They back it up week in, week out, and there are peaks and troughs. And it's how you go through those troughs, because sometimes the troughs get the players and they mentally just break. They just can't cope with it.
Yeah, you want that consistency, and you referenced his high point. But what's happened for him is his low point has come up. So probably for a coach, you want those players where that gap isn't too big. You know they can go up there, but look, if they're having a down day, it's not as big a gap. It's
a 6 out of 10 instead of a 3.
Yeah, or a 5
exactly.
out of 10 because because they're now tackling, they're staying in the contest, and so everything they're doing has got an impact.
He's going very well, Paul Seedsman. Adelaide, very, very good on Friday night, as were the Cats on Saturday night. I want to talk about them after the break. Rodney Eade is our Monday analyst in the world of AFL footy. Great to have him as part of our team in 2018. He's with us to go through the games thus far in round 5. Of course, 2 more still to come tomorrow night at the G, Melbourne, Richmond, and then Wednesday at the G, Collingwood and Essendon. Saturday night, though, team, we had the Cats travel to Port Adelaide and put on a pretty clinical performance. 7 goals to 3 in the second half. Got them to run away and win by 34 points. There's a few stories from the game. Obviously, one of those will be Lindsay Thomas's hit on Scott Selwood and what happens to him under Chriso's reign as the MRO later on this afternoon.
Well, come on. You and Jimmy are the two that are specialisers of this.
He was the sandwich eater.
Well, hang on a second.
The tribunal just sat there
Hang on
and
a second.
just ate their
We were just
sandwiches.
making sure you were doing your job in the MRP.
You did nothing, you blokes.
Well, you're the MRP, Jim.
Oh, no, I'm not.
What are you giving this? What are you giving Lindsay before we get onto the game itself?
He probably gets 2 weeks.
How come?
Careless, high.
Careless, high.
And now, look, a lot of people go, "Oh, it was intentional." Yeah, he did bump him in the head.
He intended to bump him.
He intended to
but that's
bump.
not how intentional works.
Yes, so you're still entitled to bump in the game of footy, but he carelessly got him in the head.
Yep. So if you choose to bump, your duty of care is to do it correctly and legally without causing pain or injury. He failed that task, so he will be suspended as a result of that, but it's not an intentionally poor act.
Now, the outrage specialist will go, he looked at him in the head and he tried to bump him in the head.
Well, your former teammates called it a dog act.
Yeah, look at though, his first contact is with the elbow, with Selwood's elbow. He hit Selwood's elbow. That was his foot. You can see the elbow move, and then then the rest of his body then hit him in the head. So I don't think he intentionally meant to hit him in the head. He's gone past the ball.
That's okay. You're allowed to do that.
To bump him, and he went to bump him, but it was a careless act.
You're allowed to bump.
Mm.
Yeah, and as crude as it looked, you're still allowed to bump in the game.
Is there an element of Lindsay Thomas being a bit of a whipping boy? That it was if that was
Joel Selwood.
If it was Joel Selwood, if it was Jared Pollock, just say for example, that did that, would we be as?
That'd be rare.
It'd be. But you do draw that attention because of your past actions, Whitey. So
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
I
only
understand
publicly,
that.
as opposed that won't affect the outcome of this.
No, I understand that, but I think do we jump down his throat because of a couple of incidents in the past?
Well, some do,
but that's why
absolutely.
why people do jump down people's throats. They think he's a recidivist.
Yeah, but I didn't think that was horrendous what he did on Saturday night. I thought it was.
It had some serious
poor.
potential to be very dangerous.
It was a bad thing to do.
Yeah,
It was crude.
But he'll cop his whack. He'll cop his 2 weeks or so. Whatever MRO.
But I don't agree with this. I don't agree in the policy that people want, where you try and use a player as an example or your opportunity to make statements.
Yeah, that's right.
You treat everything as it comes to you.
Yeah.
So, and it's not sticking up for Lindsay, but we'll call it Daniel Harford doing it. You don't decide Daniel Harford's case is the one that we're going to elevate for an extra couple of weeks just to prove a point.
All right, so what do we make of Geelong?
Oh, they're awesome, mate.
Geelong are very good. Well, they've integrated what they've done beautifully, and perhaps
silly question, Whitey.
Under the cloud of darkness too, is they've integrated a lot of kids into their squad rocket. They've got a pretty young group. They were the 4th youngest team last week, I think, and maybe even lower.
Yeah, half the side under 50 games right
this
now.
week. So they're winning games with and redeveloping on the run, a bit like Rocket. Looking at you, Rocket. Alistair Clarkson did last year with Hawthorn. They're redeveloping on the run, Geelong, and being very, very good.
Yeah, they are. They're very impressive. I think down back, I think Jim said yesterday that Blitzarves has got to play down back. I think where they've vaunted midfield now and with Ablett to come back in, and there's plenty of players to throw through there. You got Duncan and Hall Smith played very well.
Oh, the golden retriever was good.
Yeah, Kelly, Menengola. So they've got enough players. They've got a lot of options apart from Dangerfield and Selwood. So I don't think Blitzarves there. Maybe he might come up and tag one day if there's a certain player. But him down back gives him a role. Stewart's a very good player. I thought they got. I think both teams defended well. They both had some numbers back. But I think Geelong were a bit better on the counter-attack. They were able to use the ball better. They looked more dangerous when they went forward.
And a bit of the advantage of, so what you call it, young players, they got young players as far as games experience, but they've backed in, mature age draftees.
Yeah.
Tom Stewart being, I think he was 22 when he got to the Cats.
He's terrific, Tom Stewart.
Yeah, Kelly was 22. Menengola was 22.
He was a bit older, I think. I think he's about 25.
Yeah, even a bit older. But they've played a lot of footy. And then even Jordan Cunico, he's not a first-year player.
No.
So they've served their time playing a lot of senior football, maybe at the level below. So they're ready. They're actually ready to play.
See, I want to jump on a team here. My view is that Geelong should be the premiership favourites, and by some margin.
That's not beat Richmond.
I think they are the best team in the competition.
I want to see
I think that. No, the reason I say that is that I think that I don't think the competition is particularly strong this year, and they've got three of the absolute best players in the world playing for them in the midfield. And
but that can cause its own problems.
No, I understand that.
As well. So
I understand
it's about
that.
how that works.
Yeah.
So I thought they defended very well the other day, on Saturday night. The three of them playing, the defensive actions to the midfield actually get diluted.
But what my point is that if they can find 3 or 4 of these youngsters that we're talking about that can become bona fide AFL players before the end of the season, to complement Taylor, Henderson coming back, Guthrie's still got to come back into the team as well. I just feel that that's the obvious. They play all the games down at Geelong. I think it's the obvious they'll finish top 4, and they're going to be the ones to beat come September.
Yeah, I thought they were a definite top 4 side because of the 9 at home, and then they pick off a couple away from home. That's 14 wins. That makes you 13, 14 wins. That makes you top 4 comfortably. But I still want to see them play Richmond because last year they couldn't crack the Richmond code. When they play them twice at the MCG, which is important as well. Once they play Richmond and we see that game, and
absolutely.
They don't have to win it, but I want to see they've actually had the ability to work their way through that sort of riddle.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I just think in an even competition, the advantage of having so many good players that they've got has to be an advantage at some point. When a lot of the good clubs aren't playing great footy.
No, that's right. I think the competition's evened up, but I think. So it was an 8 out of 10 last year. It's to a 7 out of 10. I think across the board it's just dropped a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
12 teams, 3 wins, Rocket. 12 teams, 3 wins if Melbourne win.
Very even.
Very even.
But
can't argue with stats.
But because I think Sydney have slipped a little bit.
Yep.
Giants got injuries, but they not as good as they were last year, and they're up the top. Adelaide with injuries. I think the competition's just dropped a bit.
Maybe Richmond don't lose games at all. I don't know, but there will be a team that will emerge as the one to beat. We haven't got to that point yet, but I just wonder whether the obvious is Geelong. And if they've done an incredible job list management wise to still be a contender with what they've gone through over such a long period of time.
Can you have a winner and a loser and a draw, Rocket? St Kilda and the Giants?
No doubt.
Who is the winner?
I think emotionally, St Kilda would be disappointed. Both teams would think they could have, should have won. But St Kilda will walk away with a positive. So they'll sell a message today. I would think Leon and the team would be disappointed and probably treat it as a loss. They'd be walking into their rooms today in review thinking, that's one that got away. So, I think internally within the 4 walls would be a winner and a loser.
They seemed, you talked about North Melbourne before in the first 5 minutes. St Kilda in the first 5 minutes, we saw a different team as well. We knew that we were going to get a different level of performance and intensity from St Kilda in the first 5 minutes. Whether or not it was going to be able to be sustained was the other question. But they found a way to get back into that game. But it's the level of effort and intensity at the footy and the hunt for the ball, Jim, that really stood out for me in that early game. Yeah,
Jack Stevens said after the game, he goes, they pretty much as a playing group said, well, let's actually have a crack by taking the game on, attacking-wise. And it's kind of funny. If we get beaten by 50 having a crack, it's much better than just sitting back and waiting the game come at you and sort of sitting on your heels and getting beaten by 50. And they played that way. They played with a bit more dare in their footy. They ran and carried, they handballed a bit more, but their young players attacked the man pretty hard. Like Caulfield, who looks like a real find because he was pick 8, wasn't he?
Pick 8, all the greats.
All the greats at pick 8. He looks like a great find. And I really liked Brandon White's game on Toby Green. He played a fantastic game.
Yeah, I think I didn't see them play the week before against Geelong, but some Kilda supporters were pleased with their effort, whether they had the intensity they had on the weekend. But it's execution, and whether the change of mindset, as Jim's saying, that they take the game on. So they've actually executed a bit better than they have in the previous weeks, because you can have effort and intensity and work, but if you keep turning the footy over, then it actually drops the confidence. So be able to get some reward for effort and be able to hit some targets, obviously, that's the way they need to come every week and be able to play that way.
And Billings has got the yips. He can find, the amazing thing about him, he can find space inside 50, which is a skill. He just can't convert.
Is there something lacking with the Giants? Is there like a
Tom Scully?
There just seems to be something that even through last year that secret recipe that they don't have this hardness about them.
But it's interesting that I always admired them when they were younger. They had a bit of spunk about them. Toby Green in your face, and they wouldn't take a backward step. Maybe sometimes they'd go over the line. And I thought, they're a hard-edged side. And I still think they are, but they haven't got the ruthlessness.
No.
They're not ruthless. They'll answer any challenge, and they have got a bit of spunk about them, but they should have been able to put the foot on the throat. They should have been able to absorb that first half and be able to go ahead.
If they were a tennis player, which clearly they're not, they're happy to win 7-5, 6-4. Like, they don't...
Or happy to win in 3 sets.
Yeah, they don't try and win 6-2. I think they always feel they're going to win, and they just sort of cruise through games as opposed to have that killer instinct about them. I don't know. It's been like that for a couple of years.
Yeah, I think the loss of Scully is significant. He gives them that real... I mean, Dylan Shield does it too to a degree, but he's that real animal up and down the ground that they just don't have now. So I reckon he's a really important part of their plans, and without him, it changes their dynamic through the middle of the ground.
And Kelly out, of course.
Well, he doesn't help. Yeah, he's not being there doesn't help.
But you have a look at one player who's really consistent is Caniglio, isn't he? Oh, gee,
good player.
Every week he just turns up and just plays a high performance. Fantastic.
Whereas Dylan Shield drifts in and out of games, he goes all day.
Yeah, and they're playing Shield a bit as that high forward at times.
Yeah, that's right.
I reckon he's close to their best midfielder. Just a dynamic player.
10 possessions in the first quarter and finished with 21 and spent the last 5 minutes on the bench. They couldn't get him out.
Oh, yeah, that was a setback.
10 minutes on the bench.
Was it 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Dylan Shield.
I reckon Leon will be losing his screw there.
Well, the frustrating thing for him was when the Saints kicked 2 of their last couple of goals. That's when you make the rotation. No one came off. And then the play got stuck, as we saw, in the last minute or so on the far wing.
Just take the closest player, don't care who it is.
Exactly.
Get it off.
Get him off.
And then you've got the other one bloke back on the next 30 seconds.
Shouldn't have been off in the first place. Keep him out there.
Put him forward. Put him in the goal square. One out, Whitey, as seems to be the...
In a close game, you can't take good players off, surely.
Maybe the players out there thought they were the good players.
Well, are those things taken into account, Rocket? Are they taken into account? Taking your good players off and 5 minutes to go?
Oh, there's no doubt. No doubt you think about it. Why
does it happen, though?
Oh, I've got no idea. It's frustrating, Daniel.
They need a beverage.
They need a beverage. Luke needs a beverage too after the Doggies' performance in Freo, but more on that through the week.
Pelly's in tomorrow, so we'll chat to him.
We can talk about that with the Bont tomorrow in the Inner Sanctum. Rocket, that's it for you this week. Well done. Great to see you.
Quick time. It went very quickly.